As all of you know, NASCAR is a very dangerous sport. Over the last 20 years though, it's increasingly become one of the safest motorsports in the world. Now, it's a bit of a surprise when drivers get hurt racing during a NASCAR race. So today we're going to look back at some of the incidents that made NASCAR drivers miss races in the last decade or so. Also, more than 80,000 of you guys watching are returning to my channel every month, so if you keep finding yourself watching my videos, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a video. Now, let's get right into it.
Car, Kyle Busch, he's looking.
Hamlin edges ahead. They get it, they touch! They touch, and here comes Kyle! Hamlin, Logano on the wall. Hamlin spins down the racetrack, and Kyle Busch wins in California.
On the last lap of the 2013 Auto Club 400, Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin made contact while fighting for the win. Denny had a vicious hit with an inside wall that was without a safer barrier. Everyone knew something was wrong when Denny laid on the ground outside of the car surrounded by paramedics. Hamlin was diagnosed with a compression fracture in his lower back. Denny missed 4 races, with Brian Vickers driving in his place 3 times and Mark Martin once. Coincidentally, since the accident, Hamlin has missed only one other Cup race, the Auto Club 400 the next year in 2014, due to a sinus infection that blurred his vision.
Blasted out into 4th. Hard on the wall goes, is that Allmendinger?
And Dale Jr. It's the 88.
Crossing from traffic.
Hold the brake here, man.
In mid-2016, Earnhardt Jr. admitted to having concussion-like symptoms due to this wreck at Michigan. He raced the next 3 races at Sonoma, Daytona, and Kentucky before feeling any symptoms. Jr. stated that this was a scary time for him since he didn't feel any symptoms immediately, but it took nearly a month to feel them. He said his symptoms, vision, and balance problems, and their gradual development made it impossible to put an exact timeline on his recovery. Eventually, he was ruled out of the rest of the 2016 season, and he turned his attention on recovering for a full 2017 campaign.
Yep. And you'd think that Kurt could go as...
Hang on to it, Kurt. Hard into the wall.
Wow. That was a hard hit for that right rear quarter panel, and you see the damage. That was coming to the green flag, and this is going to force...
One of the biggest storylines of NASCAR's 2022 season was how susceptible to injuries drivers were in the next-gen car, and more specifically, in the rear-end impacts. Kurt Busch's crash in qualifying at Pocono is what boosted this conversation. After what looked like a routine wreck, it was announced that Kurt Busch had a concussion and would miss some time. After continuing to push back his return, by the time playoffs came around, it was confirmed Kurt wouldn't return for the 2022 season. Kurt eventually announced his retirement from full-time racing, and to this day still hasn't been medically cleared to return to racing.
Bowman!
Alex Bowman. And you see the right side damage for Bowman.
Okay, road, hang on a sec here.
And it happens in 3 and 4.
I can't drive the rest of it.
Later the same year, in the 2022 playoff race at Texas, Alex Bowman was the second victim to the rear-end impacts of the next-gen car. Like Kurt's wreck, this seemed like a pretty routine hit to the wall, but Bowman suffered a near-season-ending concussion. Bowman came back to race the season finale at Phoenix. Later on in the race, Cody Ware had this hard crash, and it seemed almost certain he would be out of the car for a couple of weeks. Fortunately for him, he was able to race the next week at Talladega.
Eric Jones around, back across the field. The big one, part 2 at Daytona.
Yeah, they can't do this.
Say hi. Nice straight. Did anybody hit you there, Kel?
A horrific crash for Kyle Busch, who slid through the infield grass and went head-on into the inside wall. And he is climbing from that car, and that is an unbelievable sight. Wow.
The Cup Series isn't the only NASCAR division that's forced drivers to miss time. In 2015, Kyle Busch suffered a compound fracture in his lower right leg and a midfoot fracture in his left foot. Busch missed the first 11 races of the Cup Series season, but came back strong and won in his 5th race back at Sonoma. After a 17th place finish at Daytona, Busch won 3 straight races and solidified himself a spot in the playoffs. As we all know, Kyle ended up winning the season finale at Homestead and took home his first Cup championship.
The same kind of situation by Chandler Smith that we saw earlier.
And the caution is out. Jordan Anderson. We talked about Jordan being in the field, and there is a lot of fire.
Sorry, but get out.
Oh, man. Get that thing stopped.
And that's a big hit. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That was, he didn't know where he was.
Yes.
He couldn't see where he was, and he knew he had to get out. So lucky that he was able to get above the wall and out that door. Holy cow, that was dramatic.
Jordan Anderson suffered one of the scariest wrecks in recent memory at Talladega in late 2022. His truck caught fire going into Turn 1, and after the exit of Turn 2, Jordan couldn't wait to get out any longer. He started climbing out before his truck came to a complete stop, and luckily wasn't injured further. However, Jordan did suffer second-degree burns across his neck, face, right arm, and both knees.
Crowded up there in the front right now with the 42. Oh,
Whoa,
trouble. Big
crash. Danica Patrick and Joey Logano and Eric Almirola.
Holy smoly. Oh, heavy damage there on Danica. Those cars are killed.
And Almirola piling in at the last second and going up in the air.
Seemingly out of nowhere, Danica Patrick, Joey Logano, and Eric Almirola were sucked into one of the hardest crashes at an intermediate track in the 21st century. Logano had a mechanical failure that made his car turn left, straight into Danica Patrick's right rear. Danica had a massive hit, but Almirola came sweeping in seconds later and had an equally hard hit. Unfortunately, Eric's car got airborne and slammed down very quickly. This was the leading factor that caused a compression fracture in his T5 vertebrae. Eric missed 7 races due to the crash, with Bubba Wallace, Regan Smith, and Billy Johnson filling in for him.
Not at all. Ryan Newman off turn 4 for the final time. Blaney to the outside, to the inside. Here comes Hamlin up the outside. Wow. Crash into the wall, into the air. Goes Newman.
Upside down.
In a shower of sparks on his roof, Ryan Newman comes across the line, 4th.
Ryan Newman looked to be in prime position to win the 2020 Daytona 500. However, coming to the line, Ryan Blaney got into his right rear and shipped him to the outside wall. Newman flipped onto his roof and then was hit by Corey LaJoie, which made Newman flip again in midair. Newman cruised to a stop on his roof, and many feared the worst. But only a couple of days later, Newman was pictured walking out of the hospital with minimal injuries. Because of the pandemic, Newman missed only 3 races and was able to make it back to NASCAR's return from the COVID break at Darlington. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more. I could have gotten into some more driver injuries, but I just wanted to showcase ones that resulted in drivers actually missing races, just to highlight some of the bigger ones. Thankfully, all of these drivers were okay, and we hope to not see this happen again in the future. Anyways guys, that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.